Good morning, Nachum. Good Erev Shabbos, everybody. Tomorrow we have the privilege of reading Parshas Emor. Not only are we getting closer to Shavuos, but whoa, these parshios have been jam-packed with mitzvos. Parshas Emor, according to the Chinuch, contains 63 mitzvos, 24 positive and 39 restrictions. Whoa. Now these restrictions and positive mitzvos apply to so much of our life, including the parsha of the Moadim, which you have, including the mitzvah of counting the Omer, which we counted last night, 29 days in the Omer. We have, interestingly, in the beginning of the parsha, we'll come back to this in a moment, laws that are specific Torah's Kohanim, Torah for and the laws of the Kohanim, including, interestingly, that we learn out from this parsha, to whom each and every Jew, unfortunately, when the time comes, is to sit Shiva, the 7 relatives for whom one is to mourn, sit Shiva. And let's begin with an interesting law that the Torah teaches, V'ki to. We, as a community, are to recognize that the Kohen has certain special privileges, and we are to be careful not to deprive the Kohen of these privileges, of his getting the first aliyah, of his being the first one to be served, to lead the benching, etc. And the idea is that the Kohen has certain mitzvos, positive, negative. He has the prohibition that he cannot marry a divorcee, he cannot go to the cemetery and funerals, but at the same time, while we are obligated to put him on this pedestal, interestingly, he is obligated to bless the people, as we find in Parshas Naso, Kosavorchu es Bnei Yisrael. This is the formula with which you are to bless the Jewish people, Amor Lohem. You are to say to them, and we know that this is a biblical obligation, not just a right that he has, that if tomorrow he's in the mood, he'll bless the people, and the next day if he's not, he won't. He is obligated. It's a kind of what you would call pay forward, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given him certain privileges. Whoa, a gift. And even though you might not be able to define precisely holiness, what that means for Kiddush To, but that we are to ensure that he retains a certain higher degree of holiness than, be it the rest of the Jewish people, Leviim, Yisraelim, Gerim. He has a higher standard. Whoa, God has allocated this Kedusha, as they say in their blessing, Asher Kitshonu Biktushaso Shel Aharon. He has given us some of the sanctity of Aharon, the Kohen, and interestingly, he has to pay forward, meaning, how does he pay back Hashem and the Jewish people? By Kosavarchu, by blessing the Jewish people. I believe there's a certain formula we might see that this applies not only to a Kohen who receives from the Torah and is to, quote, give forward, pay forward to the Jewish nation, it's not simply one hand washes the other, but rather we have an obligation to others. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu bestows and gives us gifts, we have to then utilize these gifts for and on behalf of others. And that's why the Torah says in Parshas Mishpatim, that where the Torah says that a Jew is obligated to lend money to another Jew if he knows that he can live up to his laws as a lender. What does that mean? The Torah tells us in Mishpatim that when and if a Jew lends money to another Jew, lo siya lo kenosha, you are not to treat him as a creditor. So, for example, Mr. A borrows from Mr. B $1,000 for 30 days. So Mr. B can't, after the third day, the fourth day, the 24th day, say, don't forget, you owe me $1,000. That is being like a creditor. And if you know yourself that you're going to remind him, whoa, don't lend the money. Amazing. It's a mitzvah to lend, but only if you can do it in the right way. So much so, listen carefully, I love this. You can go for a walk on Shabbos afternoon because you had a little bit too much jolt, and it's Baruch Hashem, the weather's turning nice. And what's going to be? You cannot walk intentionally on the block to whom you've lent the money. You can't walk in front of the lender because he might say to himself, oh, there he is. Mr. B is walking in front of my house to remind me that I owe him the money. Whoa. If this is the possibility that the lender is going to feel this way, you have to take every precaution not to be to him, as the Torah says, do not act toward him as a creditor. But what does the Torah say? To whom are you lending money? Es he'oni, the poor, imach, the poor who is with you. What does that mean, the poor who is with you? So the rabbis explain so beautifully that why did Hashem give you a little bit more? And why did Hashem intentionally give him a little bit less? And the answer is, in order that you should be able to take the blessing that Hashem gave you to help others. So this is the first thing I'd like to point out that we have regarding the Kohen who receives and is obligated to give. Let's move on to today. Today happens to be Pesach Sheni. The Torah teaches us in the fourth book, in Parshas Baaloscha, the Torah is teaching us that if a Jew, when we had the Beis HaMikdash, and please God, when we will have the third Beis HaMikdash, this law will once again be in effect, that if a person missed the 14th of Nisan, the 14th of Nisan, Erev Pesach. The 14th of Nisan is the day that we bring the Korban Pesach. We bring it on Erev Pesach and we eat it at the Pesach Seder, Emeritus Hashem, as we will do. Okay? So the Torah tells us that if a Jew could not bring the Korban Pesach, the Paschal offering, in its right time, namely in the first month, then the Torah says you are to bring it in the second month. Now, the Torah tells us that these individuals who were unable to bring the Korban Pesach is because they were either or Tmei Nefesh, they were literally doing a mitzvah of carrying perhaps the bones of Yosef or a mace mitzvah, but the Torah says that these persons were exempt, because if you are in a state of Tumah, you cannot participate in the Korban. You can eat matzah, you can eat moror, but you can't participate in the Korban. So now, listen carefully. They are exempt. But what do they come and what do they teach us? They say to Moshe, we don't want the exemption. Lama nigara. Why should we be, oh my goodness, have the rug pulled out from between us? Why should we lose out on the privilege? Thus showing that even though they were exempt, that's not, quote, the Jewish way. They want to participate. The Korban Pesach, is found in several places, but let's go to Bo, where the Torah says, "V'chiyogur itcha ger v'osa Pesach Lashem," that one would think if a proselyte, a ger, was living amongst you, so we could say, Avodim hoyinu l'faro b'Mitzrayim, we were slaves and our parents were slaves, but his parents were not a slave, so how can he do it? So the Torah says, a ger, a geores, a convert to Judaism, have to participate in the Korban Pesach. Why? Because the Korban Pesach, and the Torah repeats this twice in Bo and in Ba'aloscha. Among the many laws of the Korban Pesach is that you are not etzem lo sish beruvo, you're not to break a bone in the Korban Pesach. Why not? Explains the Sefer HaChinuch, because it is poor individuals that eat in such a way to try to get as much marrow as they can from the bone. But royalty, a prince, a princess, doesn't have to do that. They can get as much as they'd like. On the night of Pesach, we become, all of us, royalty. We weren't only freed from Paro, but we become from slavery to freedom to royalty. You are part of royalty, and you have to participate again with royalty. Something very interesting. You have to give and pay forward for what we received. And finally, this coming Monday night and Tuesday is Lag BaOmer. Now, traditionally, people will tell you, what do we celebrate on Lag BaOmer? And you'll say, rightly so, that the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. But many of the commentaries tell us that we don't celebrate that they stopped dying. What we do celebrate is that Rabbi Akiva, who lost 12,000 pairs of students, Rabbi Akiva did not throw the towel in, but rather, according to the Medrash, either 5 or 7 Talmidim, he continued our Masorah by giving smicha to them, and therefore Torah was perpetuated for and from the next generations, paying forward. Now listen carefully. What did the 12,000 pairs, as the Gemara identifies them, what did they do? Lo nogu kavod zeh bozeh. They did not show respect one to another. Does that mean they didn't hold the door? Does that mean that they didn't say good morning and good night? So the Medrash Rabbah in Koheles, chapter 11, says, Rabbi Akiva said to these new students, Rishonim, you want to know why the earlier ones died? Lo mesu elam mipnei shoiso eineim tzora batorah. Their eyes were tzara. Tzara means short-sighted in the sense they did not share their Torah. Tzoros ayin. They unfortunately had a competitive nature to their chavrusa. Instead of one chavrusa appreciating the other one, instead of each one realizing how much they get from the other one, no, it was like a duel. Who can outsmart the other one? Who can answer, ha, and you couldn't. So this is the exact opposite as to way Torah is to be. Torah is to be given to you in a meaningful, loving way, and this is what we have an obligation to pass on to the next generation. We learn it from the Kohen, we learn it from Pesach Sheni, and we learn it from Lag BaOmer, wishing everybody Shabbat Shalom, a happy Pesach Sheni, and please God, a very joyful Lag BaOmer to all.